In the merciless Nevada desert, where survival means kill or be killed, an ancient gray wolf stood over a dying Mustang foal and made a choice that would shatter everything we thought we knew about wild predators. What happened next between these two unlikely souls would challenge the very laws of nature itself, proving that sometimes the most extraordinary acts of compassion emerge from the darkest moments of desperation. The Nevada wilderness stretched endlessly under a punishing summer sun, its harsh beauty hiding deadly secrets beneath every rocky outcrop and withered sagebrush. In this unforgiving landscape, where water was precious and shade was salvation, a 3-week-old chestnut Mustang foal named Spirit lay collapsed in the dust, hours away from death. 2 days earlier, a violent thunderstorm had shattered the peaceful rhythm of the Ruby Mountain herd. Lightning split the sky like angry veins, sending wild horses scattering in every direction across the treacherous terrain. Spirit, too young and too small to match the desperate pace of his fleeing family, had stumbled down the wrong ravine. Now miles from his mother's protection, the little foal's story was writing itself toward a tragic end. His once gleaming coat was now caked with dust and grime. Each breath came in shallow, labored gasps that seemed to echo across the silent desert. His small ribcage rose and fell with diminishing strength, and his dark eyes, once bright with the boundless curiosity of youth, stared unseeing at the vast blue sky above. In this moment, Spirit represented every vulnerable creature that nature discards without mercy. But nature, it seemed, had other plans. A quarter-mile away, hidden in the shadow of weathered rocks, a pair of amber eyes had been watching since dawn. Shadow was no ordinary predator. At 12 years old, this battle-scarred gray wolf was ancient by wilderness standards, a living relic with grizzled fur and a face marked by countless struggles. Once the proud alpha of a thriving pack, he now wandered alone, cast out by younger, stronger wolves, who saw only weakness where wisdom once commanded respect. Shadow's hunting days were largely behind him. Arthritis made his joints ache with every step, and a cracked canine tooth turned every meal into a challenge. Recently, he'd survived on smaller prey and carrion, whatever the harsh landscape offered to an aging predator whose prime had long since faded. The dying foal represented more than just an opportunity, it was a lifeline. An easy meal in a world that had grown increasingly difficult to navigate alone. But as Shadow crept closer, his movements calculated despite his physical limitations, something unexpected happened. 20 yards from the collapsed horse, the wind shifted, carrying with it new scents that made his scarred ears prick forward. Coyotes were approaching from the south, and something else, something distinctly human. In that pivotal moment, as twilight shadows began to stretch across the desert floor, the foal suddenly lifted his head. Perhaps sensing the predator's presence, Spirit's glazed eyes found Shadow's amber gaze across the dusty space between them. What passed between predator and prey in that instant transcended every law of the natural world, the dying innocence of youth meeting the ancient wisdom of a survivor. Shadow took another deliberate step forward, his decision crystallizing with each heartbeat. But what would this old wolf choose? Would this be Spirit's final moment, or was fate about to intervene in the most extraordinary way imaginable? As darkness crept across the Nevada wilderness, two solitary lives hung in the balance, and neither of them knew they were about to rewrite the rules of survival itself. Shadow's ancient instincts screamed at him to strike. Every fiber of his predatory DNA, honed through millennia of evolution, demanded he claim this vulnerable prey. The foal lay defenseless, a perfect opportunity in a world that offered precious few. Yet something held the old wolf frozen in place, caught between hunger and an inexplicable hesitation that defied his very nature. The foal made one last desperate attempt to rise, managing only to lift his head a few trembling inches before collapsing back into the dust. That small movement sent golden particles spiraling upward in the fading light, and Shadow found himself stepping closer, not to attack, but to observe. His scarred head tilted slightly, amber eyes studying the dying creature with something that looked disturbingly like curiosity. 10 miles away, wildlife biologist Jessica Harmon gripped her truck's steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. At 32, she'd spent a decade tracking Nevada's wild horse populations, and she'd witnessed too many tragedies in these unforgiving mountains. Today's mission felt like another exercise in futility, searching for a separated foal that logic said was already dead. "We're probably too late," she told her colleague Mark, who sat scanning the horizon with binoculars. If the herd scattered during that storm 2 days ago, a foal on its own wouldn't last long out here. Mark nodded grimly. "Still have to try. The satellite tracker shows the main herd about 15 miles north now. If we find it alive, we could attempt a reunion." Jessica didn't respond. She'd learned not to hope too hard in this business. Back at the dried creek bed, Shadow had made his decision, though even he might not have understood what it meant. Instead of delivering the killing bite his instincts demanded, the wolf lay down several feet from Spirit, resting his grizzled muzzle on his paws. He would wait, whether for death or something else entirely. Perhaps even Shadow didn't know. As twilight deepened, Spirit's condition deteriorated rapidly. His breathing became more labored, consciousness slipping away like water through cupped hands. It was then that Shadow did something that would have shocked wildlife experts around the world. He rose and approached the dying horse, gently nudging Spirit's neck with his muzzle. When there was no response, the wolf's amber gaze shifted to a small depression nearby where, remarkably, a tiny pool of water remained from the recent storm. Shadow looked back at the foal, then at the water, an ancient conflict playing out behind his weathered eyes. Miles away, Jessica's truck bounced over brutal terrain when Mark suddenly pointed ahead. "I think I see something by that dried creek movement near the rocks." What neither human could yet comprehend was that in this desolate corner of the wilderness, an old predator was about to make a choice that would challenge everything they thought they knew about the natural world. As dusk painted the desert in deep purples and gold, Shadow made a decision that shattered the fundamental laws of predator and prey. Instead of waiting for Spirit to die, the ancient wolf moved toward the small depression where precious rainwater had collected. He dipped his grizzled muzzle into the life-giving liquid, then turned back toward the collapsed foal with water still dripping from his fur. What happened next defied 60 million years of evolutionary programming. Shadow approached the dying Mustang and began gently licking Spirit's parched muzzle, transferring every precious drop of moisture to the foal's cracked lips. The action was deliberate, almost tender, as if this battle-scarred predator understood exactly what the young prey animal needed most. Spirit's eyelids fluttered at the sensation, his swollen tongue making a weak attempt to respond. Encouraged by this small sign of life, Shadow repeated his mercy mission, traveling back and forth between the water pool and the foal multiple times. On his third trip, the wolf attempted something even more extraordinary. He tugged gently at Spirit's mane, pulling with just enough pressure to communicate encouragement without causing pain. When his attempts to rouse the Mustang failed, Shadow made perhaps the most remarkable choice of all. As the desert night began its rapid cooling, he lay down beside Spirit, pressing his warm body against the horse's trembling side, sharing his body heat like a mother would protect her young. Jessica and Mark had abandoned their truck where the terrain became impassable, continuing on foot through the gathering darkness. "We should have brought portable floodlights," Mark muttered, his flashlight cutting through the gloom. Jessica didn't respond. Her attention had been captured by movement ahead, something gray against the darkening landscape. "Mark," she whispered, gripping his arm. "Look there. Is that a wolf?" Mark raised his binoculars, adjusting focus in the dim light. "I think so. And there's something else with it. Could be our foal, but they're not. The wolf isn't attacking it." "That doesn't make sense," Jessica said, quickening her pace. "Unless the foal is already." But as they drew closer, moving carefully to avoid startling the wolf, what they witnessed stopped them both cold. The old wolf was lying protectively beside the foal. And as they watched in stunned silence, he stood, went to the water pool, and returned to gently dampen the horse's muzzle again. "That's impossible," Mark breathed. "Wolves don't. I know what wolves do." Jessica cut him off, her voice barely above a whisper. "And this is something I've never seen documented anywhere." When Shadow suddenly became aware of their presence, his head snapped up, amber eyes reflecting their flashlight beam. Instead of fleeing as any wild wolf should, he stood his ground, positioning himself between the humans and Spirit. "He's protecting it," Jessica said in disbelief, watching as the ancient wolf issued a low warning growl that spoke of fierce devotion rather than aggression. In that moment frozen between wonder and fear, Jessica made a choice that honored Shadow's extraordinary courage. Slowly reaching for her canteen, she whispered, "Mark, I'm going to try something. Don't move." "Jess, that's a wild wolf." But Jessica had already taken a deliberate step forward. She unscrewed her canteen and poured water into a small collapsible bowl, her movements careful and respectful. Placing it on the ground, she backed away, her heart hammering as Shadow watched every gesture with ancient, intelligent eyes. The wolf approached the offering cautiously, muscles tense and ready for flight or fight. After sniffing the bowl, he looked back at Spirit, and then did something that would change all their lives forever. Instead of drinking, Shadow carefully picked up the bowl in his jaws and carried it to the dying foal. Through the long desert night, an impossible alliance formed. Jessica and Mark set up camp 20 yards away, taking turns watching as Shadow maintained his vigil. When coyotes approached near midnight, their yipping howls echoing across the darkness, The old wolf rose stiffly to defend his charge. Despite his age and the overwhelming odds, Shadow's protective stance and fierce warning drove the pack away. By dawn, when the mobile veterinary unit arrived by helicopter, Spirit was still alive, barely, but breathing. As Dr. Elena Rodriguez worked to stabilize the foal with IV fluids and monitors, she shook her head in amazement. Severe dehydration, malnutrition, exposure, he should have died days ago. He had help, Jessica replied, simply, showing the veterinarian her camera footage from the night. As the medical team prepared to transport Spirit to the Wild Horse Recovery Center, Shadow made his own choice about their bond's future. The ancient wolf looked at Jessica, then at the foal being loaded into the helicopter sling, and something in his amber eyes seemed to pass responsibility from one protector to another. 6 months later, Shadow and Spirit both thrived at Wild Crossroads Sanctuary, a revolutionary facility born from their extraordinary connection. Though they maintained respectful distance as different species should, their bond remained unbreakable. Shadow would position himself where he could watch Spirit graze, and when the young horse had nightmares, the old wolf would appear nearby until calm returned. Their story captured hearts worldwide, challenging everything we thought we knew about compassion in the animal kingdom. Shadow had proven that sometimes the most powerful connections emerge from our darkest moments, that mercy can triumph over instinct, and that love recognizes no boundaries between predator and prey. In choosing to save rather than take a life, one ancient wolf reminded us that compassion isn't uniquely human. It's a force that flows through all creation, waiting for the courage to let it emerge.